everyone, it's Lexi, and today I'll be sharing with you the top 5 books that I read this fall. So this includes books that I read from September, October, and November. So without further ado, let's get started. So in September, I was in beginning of the school year, I'll say, I was in a bit of a reading slump. I was adjusting to being in grad school and all that. So yeah, I was a bit in a reading slump, wasn't reading as much as I used to, but have no fear, this past month, especially in November, I've read actually quite a lot. So in September, I only read 2 books, and the first book being The Winner's Kiss by Rutkoski, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. I then read Empire Storms by Sarah J. Maas, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. So moving on, in October, I read a total of 3 books. The first book being The Bone Garden by Tess, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. I then read In a Dark, Dark Wood by Ruth, Ware, which I gave a 3.5 to a 4 out of 5 stars. And lastly, I read And Then There Are None by Agatha Christie, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. So in November, I read a total of 4 books. The first book being Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. Second book being Lilac Girls by Martha Kelly Hall. I could have that totally wrong, which I gave a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I then read the screenplay for Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them by J.K. Rowling, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. And then lastly, I read the first Spiderwick book, The Field House, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. Okay, so these, in terms of favorites, my top 5 books are in no particular order, but first I will start out with The Winner's Kiss by Rutkoski. I know when I started the Winner's trilogy, I wasn't really sure which direction this, I guess this series was going into, so I wasn't really that impressed with the first one, but I could see the potential with the ending, so I kept up with the second one and I really liked it. So I was really excited when the last book came out, and I really liked it. I thought it was a good conclusion. It had a lot of, it's very politically driven, and I really like the characters and just the struggles that they're going through and all that. So I think this was a good, strong conclusion to this trilogy. It's not necessarily one of my favorites, but I did really enjoy reading it, and just the character development and growth that we saw, and all the ups and downs. I was really nervous for all the characters in it, but it turned out all right in the end. So next, this is probably my favorite out of all the ones on here, and it's The Bone Garden by Tess, and Tess Gerritsen is one of my favorite authors. But basically, this book is about a girl who kind of moves into this house that's over almost 200 years old, and it's really worn down, but she decides to take it on anyways. It's a big fixer-upper, but so she's working in the garden and she's cleaning it up and she's digging, and she uncovers this body, basically this skeleton in her backyard, and the anthropologist kind of looked at it and they say it was a woman from the 1830s. So she kind of wants to know the history behind this, so she kind of looks into it, and it's a dual storyline. So it's present day Boston and then Boston into the 1830s, and it kind of follows a woman whose sister has died after childbirth, and she's left with this child, and also a medical student at the time, and it was gripping. I didn't really guess actually the ending. I was really surprised by it, and it's, if you like kind of murder mysteries that kind of have a historical element to it, then this one I really highly check out. It was really good. Just how Tess Gerritsen is a physician, so a lot of the stuff, because I'm in the medical field, I know it's correct and I recognize it, and just how even simple things as washing your hands after you see it, before and after you see a patient, how that was totally different. They didn't have that in the 1830s, so it was really interesting to see, and just how she describes Boston at this time. I could paint a perfect image in my head, and this book is amazing. So if you have not read it yet, please check this book out if you like kind of these books. Really good, a really good standalone, and I highly recommend it. Probably one of my favorite books of this year. So the next book would have to be In a Dark, Dark Wood by Ruth Ware, and this is also kind of a mystery one. So it follows a girl, and we're introduced to her. She wakes up in the hospital, and she was at one of her friends' bachelorette party, but she hasn't been in contact with this friend for 10 years or so, but she decides to go anyway, and she wakes up in the hospital and she hears that there was a murder that took place, and so this whole novel is her trying to piece together everything. And even though I was able to figure it out early on, I still really enjoyed it. Just everything. Even like that's what I said, I gave it 3.5 to 4 stars, even though it kind of had like a relatively low rating. I still really enjoyed it, even though I figured it out early on what was going on, so it made me feel smart, but it was really gripping. It's a good psychological thriller if you're trying to get introduced this novel, like introduced into the psychological thriller genre, but you're a little hesitant on kind of things too spooky. This one's a good like foundation to start, so if you're kind of looking into this genre, I highly recommend you check this book out. Next would have to be Lilac Girls, and this is a historical fiction novel following 3 women during World War II. One of them, Caroline, is a socialite in New York. Herta, who is a doctor for the Nazis, who ends up working at Ravensbrück, which was a female-only concentration camp where they did a lot of medical experiments. And then there is also another woman and her sister who were Polish women who were sent to Ravensbrück. And I really like this. I really have been drawn to historical fiction, particularly around World War II and like the women's perspective, especially because of The Nightingale and Codename Verity. So I was really excited to read this one. And when I was reading the author note, I learned that Caroline and Herta were actually 2 actual real people who did these things. So it was interesting. She kind of built this fictional story around these 2 sisters, and I thought it was really interesting. I did find some parts to be a little repetitive just because I did read Rose Under Fire, which takes place in Ravensbrück, so a lot of it felt like it was just like the same information over again, but I really enjoyed it. I was really attached to many of the characters in here, and I don't know, like it makes you really question like women's roles and like their different experiences, like especially for Herta because she was a doctor, and it kind of explains both sides to the coin of like why she still went ahead and did this. So yeah, it's really interesting. So if you like The Nightingale or Codename Verity, please check this book out. It is really good, and it is definitely one of my favorite books that I've read this year. And lastly, I will have to include lastly, my favorite book of fall has to be the screenplay for Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Now, I saw the movie when it came out, and then I got the screenplay right after I saw it. It came in the mail, so I pre-ordered it, and yeah, so having seen the movie first, it kind of helped me visualize everything, because I do sometimes find it hard to read plays because I can't really visualize what's going on. So it really helped, and I really just enjoyed this adventure, and I can see the potential this series will have, because now it's going to be 5 movies, I think now, because it originally was supposed to be a trilogy, but now they said it's going to be 5, so yeah, I really enjoyed it. I finished it pretty quickly, and the cover of this book is just beautiful. I could look at it all day, and it has like such nice like pictures and illustrations in it. So yeah, this one was just a really good, like it got me the Harry Potter feels again, so just kind of being within the wizarding world. So yeah, so that's it guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below what some of your favorite books that you've read this month are, or this season, and if you want to check out any of the books that I mentioned in here. So yeah, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you next time. Bye guys!